مساء الخير للجميع. أبدأ كلامي. I start by greeting you all and by thanking the مركز الحسن بن محمد for the invitation to be here along with distinguished scholars tackling this interesting topic. I would like to thank Professor Omar for the invitation and for giving me the opportunity to be with you. The Dead Sea Scrolls is a topic that deserved in the last 75 years since the discovery of the text much attention, especially in the Western scholarly world. The texts were discovered in 11 caves on the west side of the Dead Sea between 1947 and 1956. The total of some approximately 33,000 fragments were discovered that ended making up some 950 texts. That's just if you are wondering how come that nobody discovered these texts over 2,000 years, that's one answer. This is the entrance to the so-called Cave 1. This is Cave 4. Is also an answer. So how come that these texts were kept there for 2,000 years and almost nobody found them? This Cave 4 from the inside, Cave 4 is the most important cave because there we found some 15,000 fragments. And much of what I'm going to say today comes from this cave. This is Cave 6. And you see the Dead Sea in the background. And this is an example of the texts that were discovered there. We'll come to that later. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, as you will see, we have a paradox situation. Professor Said, for example, was able to give rich information from Dadan about calendars, measuring time, and so on. Although, as I assume, probably there is not a single text in the Dadanite corpus dedicated to calendars, that there is no single text that explains to us how the people of Dadan thought of time. That's probably the other way around in Qumran. I'll come to that. The latest estimation of the settlement of Qumran says that around 150 people lived there in isolation. They had, we assume, either no contact or very little contact with their social, economic, political, even religious environment. So why the calendars? I mean, the examples that were given by Dr. Laith, by Dr. Said, and by others come from daily life, come from interaction, because you need to measure time. You need to tell when this and that happen. If you buy a cow or if you become a king, you need to mention time. So what did these people need time for? The question is pure religious. In the Qumran, for the Qumran people, they needed at least two things. First, to celebrate their religious festivals at very accurate time periods. The festival of so-and-so needed to be celebrated on the day of so-and-so. because these festivals actually happened in heaven. The actual festival was decided by God. So if you want to celebrate it on earth, it has no meaning if you celebrate it in a day different than of the heavenly one. So keeping track of dates of festivals was very, very crucial to the people of Qumran. It was part of their faith. I'll come to that later. One other reason was the so-called Mishmarot, the Watchers' texts that put a schedule of the priests according to families that will serve that will take turn serving in the temple of Jerusalem. This also was seen as decided by God. Every family needed to be for a week in turn serving the temple, and no mistakes were allowed. People at Qumran were apparently so obsessed with this that they imagined the schedule starting with year zero. That, although you need the schedule for coming days, but they thought that is so eternal, that is so decided by God that you have to start from year zero. So the calendars in Qumran were controlling two things: festivals and schedule of watchers or mishmarot. But before going there, I will look at the historical and social, religious environment. Because I'm the only one apparently in this meeting talking about the Levant, about the Northwest Semitic culture. I'm showing here the so-called Gezer calendar from the 10th century B.C.E. that is counting months, not naming months, but counting months and describing. It's an agricultural text, counting months and telling us what happened during these months, but it gives us an early indication of calendric thinking in Palestine in this case. The language is Phoenician, that script is Phoenicio, Hebrew or so. In the 10th century, we can't really decide. Go down a few centuries. This papyrus from Wadi Daliya. Wadi Daliya is not so far away from the Dead Sea. يا شباب الإضاءة لو سمحتوا. الدكتور مرخطن يشكك في الصور التي أعرض فيريد أن يراها. يا صاحبي ضوء الحاضرين كافي، اطفي الضوء كله. يكرم التصوير. على أي حال، وادي الدالية هذا نص من نصوص عثر عليها في وادي الدالية، يعود إلى القرن الرابع قبل الميلاد. التقويم فيما يبدو فيه قمري، النصوص تجارية اقتصادية، التقويم قمري. هذه الملاحظة مهمة. آسف، أنا حولت على العربي يعني، أنا آسف. وادي الدالية ولم يعترض أحد. وادي الدالية 4th century B.C.E. Not far from Dead Sea. The text is economic. It uses apparently a lunar calendar, which is not surprising at all because, as Dr. Laith explained and other colleagues, we move in the Babylonian calendric tradition. So we have the Babylonian month names and probably other indications that we are using here the Babylonian tradition. So in Palestine, 4th century BCE, we have the lunar system. Of course, we put the Old Testament a bit earlier here, so probably 5th century BCE. That includes calendric hints, but no detailed information. Now I come to this example. Why was it so important for the Qumran people to adhere to a very strict calendar? So, for example, speaking about fasts, on the 20th and 26th of the first month, you have the fast of weaving of the barley Omar. On the 15th of the third month, you have the harvest fast. How do you know that? After the first fast, you count 50 days. Now, on the third of the fifth month, you have the fast of the first fruits of wine. Again, you count 7 weeks, that's 49, and on the 50th day, you have the fast. Count again 50 days, you would have the fast of the first fruits of oil on the 22nd of the 6th month. That means if you made a mistake in calculation in the first fast, all other fasts will take place on the wrong date. That is, in heaven, by God, angels will be celebrating something, and on earth you are celebrating something else, and the whole sense of the thing is missed. This is why you have, of course, I'm mentioning this. Dr. Said in his talk mentioned Ramadan. In 3 days' time, we have Ramadan, where, you need not say this loudly, where we are almost free to decide whether Saturday will be the first of Ramadan or not. So Saudi Arabia decides Saturday is the first day of Ramadan. In Jordan, we usually say if Jordan and Saudi Arabia are in good terms, Jordan joins. If not, Jordan starts Ramadan on Sunday, on the following day. You can do that. One funny or not funny examples, a few years ago, the Palestinians in the West Bank started Ramadan and on a day. The Palestinians in Gaza started on the next day. You can do that. What you can do, in about 70 days' time, there will be the pilgrimage, al-Hajj, that definitely should fall on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. So it is irrelevant when did you start Ramadan. Do you agree politically or don't you agree politically? There is no other option but to celebrate the Hajj, the pilgrimage, on the 10th of July, just to show you how important it's to adhere to a certain calendar. So that was the example. No, I showed you the text from Wadi Dalia, Babylonian calendar. So Babylonian calendar is not surprising at all. It is surprising in a way that the book of Enoch, that's the Ethiopic version, before 100 years, almost 100 years before the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, uses a solar calendar. Uses a solar calendar, which is atypical in this period. Of course, what we knew from the Ethiopic translation of Enoch, we knew later on through the Aramaic text found in several copies in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Also, the Enoch book in the Aramaic text uses a solar calendar. Now, we discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls that, you know, I said we have about 950 texts. 1/4 is biblical texts. 1/4 is so-called para-biblical texts, so texts similar to the biblical text. We have hundreds of texts of papyri and parchment pieces talking about the community that produced the text in Qumran. And there is a smaller genre, but very interesting, of calendric texts. We have about 19 calendric texts that are dedicated to measuring time, that tells us how to measure time. In addition to these, there are several texts in the Dead Sea Scrolls, like this one, 1QS, that includes calendric hints. It mentions year, time, some festivals here and there. There are several texts. Another is Pesher Habakkuk. A third is the War Scroll. I don't have the time to go into details, explaining what addition these texts add. But actually, as said, the 19 texts that we have, the calendric texts, go directly into the topic. So what we have here is a solar year of 12 months. Apparently, the option to use a solar year was because one felt it is securer, because you don't need this adding of 1 month. So one felt probably it is securer when counting, when measuring time for festivals. So it has 364 days, has 4 quarters. The first month and second month of every quarter has 30 days. The third month has 31 days. So that was beautifully measured. You end having 364 years. As was explained to us yesterday by several colleagues, the year actually the solar year has more than 364 days. The Dead Sea Scrolls explain that to us, that people used to add 7 days every sabbatical cycle, every 7 years, and then to add further 12 days on various time points. So you would end having a difference of something like 1 or 0.75 of a day. So that was not exactly 365.25 as the solar year is. Probably one added a day every 28 years. Anyway, they used the solar year, but were aware that even the solar year with 364 days is not sufficient, is not perfect, that it also needed intercalation. Just before I am warned not to go any further. Yes, the book of Enoch, the copies of the book of Enoch in the Dead Sea Scrolls speak about a lunar year. A lunar year, and that it was made compatible with the solar year. This might be puzzling, but apparently, for some reason, although the people of Qumran opted for the solar year, they also used the lunar year. Could it be that they did this because you are living in an environment, can't neglect it, so you need also to use a system compatible with the system used nearby? Or did they have other reasons for that? Anyway, the lunar system, the lunar year, was ultimately compatible as for time measurement with the solar one. The Dead Sea Scrolls do not differentiate, do not give us the impression that one system was preferable, but actually most calendric texts are based on a solar system. Just to give you an idea of the calendric text, and of course their fragmental nature, so we have to be always careful with reconstructions and reading and so on. But in this case, because we have, of course, we don't have 19 copies. We have 19 different texts, but still they can help us in the reconstruction somehow. I have to give at the end the result that, as I said at the beginning, although we have this intensive attention to calendars, but the calendars kept what they said general. They don't mention any seasons. They don't mention the names of the month, and they don't have any dating formulas, because I assume you are aware that the Dead Sea Scrolls, the 950 text, basically almost don't mention any historical figure, any historical event. So no dating formula, no names of months, and no seasons. More importantly, we don't know exactly if the calendars, this solar calendar of Qumran, was ever put into practice, or was it something that the people of Qumran thought, so should time be measured? Thank you so much.